I'm the token nurseryman here. I feel like we've had about 19 speakers who are scientists, and we got one commercial guy here. 19 guys talking about what I should be growing. Now I got 30 minutes to tell you about my side of the story, what I think I should be growing. So we'll try to give you the perspective from the nursery production point of view. I'm from Frank Schmidt and Son Company. We produce about 1 million trees a year, shipped all over the country. Major supplier of bare root trees to many growers in this area, serving the Chicago market, all across the East Coast, the South, the whole country. And first, my role in the company is mainly to develop and introduce new cultivars to the trade. Things have changed. I live out in Oregon. This is what Portland looked like 100 years ago. However, now Portland looks like this. This happens to be Chicago, but Portland looks just the same. Things have changed as far as trees. Our trees live in a very different environment than they used to. As far as climate goes, we've already changed that tree's climate. We've been changing the climate for urban trees for a long time. It's very different than that conifer forest that used to be there. The concrete, asphalt, steel buildings, tree pits, all of that have changed what really is most directly affecting the life of the tree. The environment changes. That's not to discount climate change going on now or in the future. I'm just saying that urban trees already live in an artificially created environment, and we can change the way we manage that environment, and that's of great importance. That's of immediate importance to the trees that are in the urban landscape. Now, that's a very different story. That's why one of my questions I asked about the natural forest stands versus the city trees that are in a managed landscape. It's when we're talking about population dynamics within native ranges of white oak or whatever tree you want to talk about, it's a very different story with the trees that are in forest reserves or natural stands here versus the individual tree that's in a city landscape. We're in the city landscapes, we're talking about one tree at a time, individual issues, not population dynamics. So what I'm concentrating on is what we as nursery people really deal with, city trees. And interesting, the climate change, this is the second conference in a month that I've been at giving a talk on trees and climate change. So this is a popular issue right now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were hearing from municipalities that the nursery industry needs to produce native trees. Native trees are the best adapted to the local conditions. We're getting a little different story now. Are native trees the answer? How can you believe in native trees if you believe in climate change? Can you believe that native trees are the answer if you also believe that our climate is changing? Don had a better slide of this. I wish I had his slide. He had Illinois traveling down south to Texas. We've done a lot of cooperation with Bert Craig at Michigan State University, and this is one of his slides I stole from him, but I don't think he'll mind because we help him out in his research. Michigan here is, Michigan here is traveling down south under two different emission scenarios and ending up somewhere down in with a climate similar to central Oklahoma or western Tennessee. So the question is, which native flora is the right native flora for Illinois for the future? Local and native, but local and native to which climate? So as a nurseryman, I'm hearing different messages. One is to plant natives. The other is to plant for future climate. So as a business, how do we make a business decision about what we should be growing? And that's something that we have to do every day. We just went through a two solid day meeting all day long, 2 days, setting up what we're going to grow next year. We do that twice a year, have a major meeting of all the management of our company to set up what are we going to produce going forward for next year. Plant native, that totally makes sense for a battle against invasives. But when you come to climate change and adaptability, exotics or invasive plants may be the ones that are really the most adapted to and most resilient to future climate change. So it becomes an issue of philosophy. Which value is more important to us as a society? To have green streets or to preserve our existing native flora? And I'm not saying either way. It's a philosophy and a value judgment that needs to be made. Now, one thing I think that is really important is to consider the adaptability of plants. In the native forests, things are determined very much by competition. The limits of a native range is generally determined by environmental conditions, the physiological limits of the plant, and ecological competition. There's a whole range of dozens of factors that interact on plants in a native range that determine whether they expand or contract and how they compete and how they replicate their population in a native stand. When you move that tree into an urban setting, you remove all those competitive factors. In the native range, slight changes in the environment can cause very significant population shifts. And there have been quite a few speakers that have addressed that, showing adaptability of species moving north or south or east or west based on projections in climate change. But the long-term ecological adaptation of a population is a very different issue than the life and death of an individual tree on the streets or landscapes of Chicago. And my experience is that deciduous trees are often limited on the north end of their range by the environment, usually cold temperatures. On the southern end of their range, they're usually more limited these are native stands I'm talking about, they're probably going to be more limited by competition. Within a faster growing trees typically live in the south and outcompete northern seed source trees. So just in general, I think that's a principle that I have observed. On city streets, there's no ecological competition, so that's removed. So then I want to comment on tree death. Trees die from freezes in a matter of minutes. They die of drought in a matter of weeks. I've never seen an established tree die directly of heat. I'm sure it's possible, but we root cuttings in greenhouses that'd kill me. We'll walk into the greenhouse. It's 120 degrees in the greenhouse, closed polytunnels, but it's 100% humidity, and there's a lot of water. As long as there's a lot of water, a lot of humidity, that's how we propagate trees. So temperature alone is not directly going to kill trees like freeze does. You got to be careful of that. With the last talk I did was out west and Eugene, Oregon. I use an example. Out in Oregon, zone 8, USDA 10 to 20 degrees. Last December 2013, they hit 10 below. Okay, huge variation. If we're going to get major weather variations, not climate variations, but within the changing climate, if we're going to get more extremes, it doesn't matter if the tree's adapted to the climate 100 years from now if it dies tomorrow from freezing. If climate change is going to bring increased weather fluctuation, you got to watch out on the cold end, especially in a climate like this in Chicago. Don't forget about cold. Okay, heat kills trees indirectly. It's a slow death. Sun scald causes cankers, they become diseased. Photosynthesis and respiration may shut down temporarily. We're just talking about that with Rich in the last talk. Stresses the trees, weakens them, and then stressed and weakened trees become more susceptible to insect attack and disease. So heat definitely plays a big role, but just don't forget about the other end of the spectrum. One quick freeze and it's all over. Okay, heat slowly and indirectly. But don't forget that you can mitigate the effect of heat by site modification. We can modify the root environment. The root environment is so important to the life and death of a tree. More so than just about anything, making a good soil volume that will work for the plant will keep it alive. Irrigation, mulch, better soil, larger volumes of soil. We've talked about that a little bit. Bigger tree pits. All of those can help mitigate the effect that climate change can have, because climate change may bring hotter air temperatures, but if you can increase the root volume and let more water into the soil, you're gonna compensate for some of that. So, question about what do we plant? What tree varieties? The first thing I like to say is you don't just bring southern trees to the north. First thing that's going to happen is we're going to see some death from freezing. The nursery industry knows, just in general practice, that it's a lot easier to move northern plants and sell them into a southern market successfully than to take southern plants and move them up and sell them into a northern climate. Just by experience, we know that. And it's more than just temperature that you deal with when you move plants from one region to another. Latitude changes day length, and day length changes the cycle, the physiology and the cycle of the plant. Longer days in the summer change the time of dormancy and things like that. So we have to be careful about bringing southern plants directly north. So what do we plant? I would suggest that we first look for trees that we know that are well adapted to the location here. And then of those plants, look for ones that also perform down in southern areas. So we know this about existing nursery plants. We know the ones that are adapted to Chicago. Now out of the plants that are adapted to Chicago, what grows well in Arkansas? You know, that plant should be good today, it should be good tomorrow. You want broadly adaptable plants that are proven to be city successful. And, you know, top 3 things that come to mind: Norway maple. Oops. Caloriana pear. Oops. Okay, we've got 2 invasive plants that we want that are moving out of the nursery business, but they're very, very broadly adaptable. Ash. Ash was, until emerald ash borer came along, that was the most universally successful plant. If somebody out of the blue just asked me somewhere, you know, random place in the U.S., you know, what's a good reliable tree to plant? Well, boy, autumn purple ash, can't beat it. Fraxinus americana there, or Pennsylvanica. But all of those reliable plants have really either gone or are going away from the plant palette. So what do we do that is still broadly adaptable? I look to things for the future, possibly like Gymnocladus, Kentucky coffee tree, Gladitia, honey locust, Taxodium. I think there's a lot of potential in Taxodium. Quercus. Quercus is a huge genus. Adapted here, adapted to much warmer areas. Mexico has twice as many species of oaks as the United States. So there's a lot of oaks that have southern adapted genes. And oaks are really promiscuous. Their pollen flies through the air. They like to create new types of oaks. So oaks are going to be a winner in this thing. Platanus, ulmus, nyssa. Those are all plants that I think have a potential for broad adaptability and withstanding climate change. And those are at the species level. Also, think about things at the cultivar level. When we talk about city trees, we're generally talking about cultivars that are clonal. And they're individuals, just like we are. You know, how many people like cold weather? Oh, come on. There are people out there that like the cold weather. How many people like warm weather? Yeah, okay, sure. We're all the same species. Geez, you know, my wife, it's time for a vacation. She wants to go to Bermuda. I want to go to Alaska. You know, I think we're the same species, but there are individuals that can be selected for adaptability to different climates. Among the red maple, well, red maple is a good example because if you want a red maple for Florida, you can plant Florida flame. You don't want to plant Florida flame in Chicago. You plant Florida flame in Florida, it's a well-adapted red maple. Autumn Spire is a good example of a red maple that was developed by Harold Pellett in Minnesota. Great red maple from Minnesota, but you bring it down to a warmer climate, and that thing shuts down. It buttons up its terminal bud by about the end of June in the nursery, whereas the other ones will grow twice as tall. It just shuts down way too early because of photoperiod. We introduced Red Point. It's become hugely successful because it's a great plant in Ontario. It's a great plant in central Georgia. It's done beautifully over a huge range climatically. So at a cultivar level, State Street originated here at Morton, introduced through the Chicagoland program. That's been a wonderful plant in that when we have shipped it to nurseries all around the country, the feedback, doesn't matter where it is, if a nursery in Oklahoma grows it, we hear, hey, this is a great plant, it does really well. Obviously, it does well here. So we're looking at cultivars that are broadly adaptable. Another one is Emerald City Liriodendron. We just introduced that a few years ago, and we didn't know really how we selected it for form and branch quality and upright shape, stiffness, storm resistance, things like that, foliage quality. But great surprise last winter, we heard from many growers in this area who had bought it from us that Emerald City lived through the winter with no problem, cold hardy here in Chicago, but their seedling crop, their seedling tulip trees had a great amount of dieback. So
what's the seed source there?
picked out by me in the nursery. I don't know the ultimate source. In a lot of cases with nursery selections, we buy in seed from a broker who supplies seed. We know generally we ask for a more northern seed source, but we don't know the specifics. A lot of times they won't tell us because they want to protect their picking location. And in other cases, seed is collected out of park trees, so the location isn't really the provenance of the tree. Not very often it's not too often that you have wild collected seed in the nursery trade. So I can't tell you. But what we do know is the individual. You know, we're not selling it by seed source. We're selling by individual named cultivar. So we have very fixed known characteristics of that tree. Okay, a few of these guys. Espresso coffee tree is a seedless male form of Kentucky coffee tree. Midwest, of course, you guys know Kentucky coffee tree. It's native here, native in the Midwest. This tree happens to be selected in Davis, California. Davis, California, if you've ever been there, if you want to go to a place where you get about 100 days where it's 100 degrees, go to the Central Valley of California. Hot, hot, hot summers. This was a planting in Davis, California, but it's a tree that's not native in California. It's planted as a landscape tree. So heat resistant plus Midwest adapted. Flash fire maple. This is a sugar maple, but this is a sugar maple that comes from this Caddo seed source in central Oklahoma. Here's one where we were able to go specifically key in on a seed source that we wanted to work with. We brought in seed from this seed source, took a lot of doing to get it, and then we made selections from it and introduced flash fire. Very adapted to heat and drought, but also has reasonably good zone 5 cold hardiness. Here it is in Oregon, bright red fall color. We shipped it down to a cooperator in central Georgia, and it performed beautifully in Georgia. So heat adapted and adapted to the climate here too. Broadly adaptable plant. I've got hope for this one. This is brand new. This is a Acer truncatum hybrid that we just introduced named Urban Sunset. We don't know that much about it yet, but it looks good. It's another one that I think will have urban adaptability. Here's the Emerald City tulip tree. And one of the things we were looking at is the foliage quality of Emerald City, the darker green leaf, nice form. And then the red point red maple, which seems to be, it's a red maple that has broad adaptability and also incredible pH tolerance. That we got lucky on that one. You know, most red maples start suffering interveinal chlorosis at about pH 6.5. Usually we start seeing them go yellow. This has gone up to pH 8. Very, very unusual in its tolerance. Faster growth. We also introduced Red Sunset. Red Point's a faster grower with better form. So that's a good one for us. We're seeing Nyssa sylvatica come on strong in the nursery business. Fire Starter is one of ours with improved upright form and red fall color. And Quercus bicolor, the oaks are growing in numbers in the nursery trade. Bicolor is one that is a real performer long term, and I think a lot of other oak species are things that are going to be big in the future. Okay. So how about nursery availability? There's this projection that our climate is changing, and then there's the assumption that nursery plants need to change too. And so what do? We have to run a business. Okay, first, realize that nursery business has just come through the worst period of time economically I have ever seen in the 40 years I've been in the business. Excess inventories and the Great Recession drove a lot of the nursery industry close to bankruptcy. Some went over the edge. We cut costs to stay in business. Right now, availability is very tight. Prices are rising. They're coming back to where they should be. Nurseries have been selling into the market at way below production cost for a number of years. So if you've been buying caliper trees for $50 to $100, those days are over. Nobody can grow 2.5-inch caliper trees for $65 or whatever you've been paying in this market. They're losing money at that price. They got to get about twice that to be able to cover cost of expenses. So how do we decide what to plant? And how does the city get the tree it needs? First of all, you got to realize we're not doing this as a philosophy. We're choosing what to grow as a business decision. When I was first asked to give this talk in Portland, they asked me this question: is the nursery business market-driven? It's like, what? Great example is Halka Nursery. I talked to Chet Halka recently. They supply the biggest projects in the U.S. he told me he was asked the similar question. How do you decide what to plant? Chet replied, I'd plant a 2x4 if somebody would buy it. I love that. Yes, we are market-driven. People that didn't figure out that you have to be market-driven aren't around anymore. It may take 10 years of the combined nursery, us as a liner grower and then the finished grower here in the Chicago market, it may take 10 years from when we start a seedling until a local nursery sells it to a commercial landscape here. So we respond to our customers. It's hard to listen to cities in general on what they want because cities tend to buy on low bid. They can't commit funding in advance. Mayors and city council chamber people, you know, the people in charge change. Takes a nursery business 10 years to grow the tree, but doesn't mean that you're going to have the same city council and mayor 10 years later. So cities often don't have a record of being our very best customer. It takes years of investment for us. I got to hurry up here. Okay, things to think about. If you really want a nursery to produce something different than its normal line of plants, how about a down payment? How about a binding contract? That's how business is done with other special order items. I think nursery would be happy to grow anything for you as long as we're assured that we can sell it. We respond to, I want to buy rather than you should grow. It's kind of like a democracy. Our product mix and vote now. There's the ballot. Whoever stuffs the ballot box gets what they want. We've been working indirectly with the New York Restoration Project trying to plant 1 million trees. And this is, in New York, this is what they asked. How do we get the trees that we need? New York was one of the few cities that has written long-term binding contracts with nurseries. They became a good nursery customer. And our good nursery customers, the ones who are regular, loyal customers that buy from us year after year, those are the guys we really listen to the most on what we're going to grow. Then we listen to our other customers. Then we pick up whatever information we can gather, and we rely on our experience, and we combine all that together to make our decisions. So criteria for new production, we have to be confident in the sales potential and the future sales potential. We think about things like insect and disease that might ruin things in the coming years. We need to know it's something that's producible. Will it grow in Oregon and make it into a product that somebody will want to buy? Will it freeze? Can we grow it profitably? And will our customers be happy with it? If we sell it to somebody, we want to make sure they're going to be happy. So we do years of testing and deciding what we are going to grow. We send out a trial pack to a number of sites, including Morton Arboretum, to test the new plants that we introduce. So the best advice I can give is nobody will really know for sure what, because you can't predict the future, but diversify, test, support research, and communicate with other organizations. And take-home message, my last slide, I do believe, one more. Take-home message is look for broad adaptability with known cold hardiness and heat and drought adaptability to warmer areas.